I don't care what anybody says. After last night, Dennis Gates is the national coach of the year.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. And quite honestly, is that the best win at Mizzou Arena since I don't even know when? Especially put the Kansas game from this past season, put any Kansas game aside. Those are almost in another category. Certainly the 2012 Kansas game, that's going to be a tough one to beat. Outside of that, well, I hope you enjoyed basketball Nirvana last night, because that was just an absolute joy to watch. From the very beginning of the basketball game, of course, Missouri gets off to a 12-0 start, and I'm just telling you, that crowd was ready for it. Holy cow, was that a great crowd. I thought Wednesday night, 8 p.m., been some crappy weather. I thought, it'll probably be close to a sellout, maybe like 12,000, 13,000, something like that. No, that was every bit of a sellout, and the crowd was freaking molten. Man, was that fun last night. That's one of my biggest takeaways for you. I mean, really, that was basketball Nirvana last night, stifled only occasionally by some questionable officiating and some replay reviews at times. But 110-98, your final score, the most points Missouri has scored against a power conference opponent in 35 years. The 89-90 Tigers were really, really good, too, by the way. That came against the Nebraska Cornhuskers when the Tigers got 111. So, indeed, this is about as good as any team can possibly play. In fact, my friend and fellow season ticket holder, listener of the podcast, Jen, actually commented that, hey, I don't even think Missouri played its A game yesterday. Well, Jen, I love you. I don't know about that. I don't know how Missouri could have played much better outside of a few missed free throws. Other than that, I honestly don't know that you could have complained about anything. And really, I said coming into that game yesterday, I thought that Missouri had basically nothing to lose, but quite a bit to gain. And I thought the Tigers played exactly like that. They played fearlessly. They played relentlessly. And again, just incredible credit to Dennis Gates and his staff. It just seems like this team, again, ever since that Kansas game, well, Missouri is trending up, and guess what? Well, the Jayhawks go in the wrong direction, at least from their perspective. But honestly, the next time I see Dennis Gates in public, he's probably going to want to stiff arm me, because I just want to give that guy a big hug. I really do. Once again, the crowd absolutely popped for Dennis Gates in the starting lineup. He is now the biggest baby face in the territory, folks. He's drawing the house. He really is. I mean, in all seriousness, you know things are not just going good, but they're going great when the crowd is giving the coach that kind of love. Usually it's just like, oh, hey, a smattering for the head coach. My goodness. And plus, into the game, Dennis Gates gets on the microphone, asked the fans not to rush the court on the stadium microphone, and guess what? They listened. I saw all of these students start running back up the steps. I mean, my God. I know Eli Drinkwitz is popular, but right at this moment, you know, Dennis Gates might be giving him a run for his money. There is no doubt about that. Nathan Hurst over at Rock M Nation tweeted out yesterday, Dennis saving a timeout to tell the students not to rush the court on Bama is cold-blooded. And then after the game, Dennis Gates said, we need that NIL money, referring to, hey, we do get fined if we rush the court, so let's save that money and use it for other purposes. Well, quite honestly, I can't argue with that logic whatsoever. And I'd have to say, after last season, you know, I really did have to question myself a little bit. Missouri goes 0-19, and I'm going, wait a second, do I not know ball? Because after year one, I thought when Desiree Reed-Francois, the Missouri athletic director at the time, when she gave Dennis Gates a healthy contract extension after just 1 year, you know what? I was all aboard that decision. I was fully convinced that Gates was the guy for Missouri after 1 year. But I mean, my goodness, 0-19, that has to, put some doubts in the back of your head. And obviously, now that John Tonje at Wisconsin has just absolutely been crushing it. He was on Missouri's roster last season and just struggled with a foot injury for the entire season. Listen, again, Tonje, the thing is, that's just gives me even more confidence in Dennis Gates and his player evaluation is my main point there. To me, that's the way to look at the whole Tonje thing. But back to the original point, and that is that not only do I think Dennis Gates, to me, he's the obvious choice for SEC Coach of the Year and for National Coach of the Year as well. I think early in the season, because Auburn was and is playing such great basketball, there was this idea that, hey, Bruce Pearl should win Coach of the Year. And look, don't get me wrong, Bruce Pearl's a great coach and he's having a great season. He's certainly a worthy candidate. But the history of this award in every sport, by the way, is exceeding expectations. When Norm Stewart, hey, the jerseys that we're wearing this year, the 93, and a nod to the 93-94 undefeated Big 8 team, well, Norm Stewart was the National Coach of the Year that season, not only because Missouri, well, the incredible record that they put up, but because the Tigers had exceeded expectations so greatly. It was the previous season where, I believe I have this right, the 92-93 season, Missouri would have missed the field, but ended up winning the Big 8 and getting in there. So the point is, it's not as though people were picking Missouri to win the league at the beginning of the season. My point here is based on expectations. Well, Missouri was picked by everyone to finish in the bottom half of the league. Something like 12, 13, even 14th I had seen, I think, something like that. And that wasn't a huge insult based on just the quality of the SEC in general, but clearly Missouri has surpassed expectations by a country mile at this point. You don't even have to talk about the bubble or getting in the tournament. I mean, Missouri could lose, speaking of 110 points, Missouri could lose every game the rest of the season by 110 points, and they would still make the field. Literally. That's not even an exaggeration. So now if you're Missouri, the hardest part of your schedule is over. You've got 3 road games left, teams that you've already beaten. You got a home game against winless South Carolina, and then you got senior day against Kentucky. Missouri can absolutely run the table here, especially with the quality of basketball that it is playing. Boy, is it an exciting time to be a Missouri basketball fan or what? So once again, just based on expectations alone, Auburn was really good last year, okay? For example, Missouri was 0-19, and while, yes, in this day and age, this is probably the biggest turnaround in college basketball history, certainly from a winless campaign, but certainly in this day and age, it's easier to do that with the transfer portal in NIL, especially with Missouri's solid NIL infrastructure that it has. I will definitely grant you that. But as the Kansas Jayhawks have found out, just because you have good NIL and a good portal strategy, you get guys in the portal, it doesn't mean you can get them all to play together or like you in Bill Self's case, it would seem. So congratulations to Dennis Gates so far on an incredible season. I just cannot wait to see what happens in March and see where Missouri ends up here in the SEC, a double bye looking almost likely at this point. That's got to be the goal still if you're Missouri. And Missouri highs, career highs, big-time nights from Mark Mitchell, Caleb Grill. Honestly, everyone played well, so let's just bask and even more Missouri glory coming up. But first, this message is from sponsor Intuit TurboTax, and taxes was dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, then waiting and wondering and worrying if you are going to get any money back. Well, now Taxes is easily uploading your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. And while you go about your day. No stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates, only an iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Well, I said Dennis Gates is the biggest baby face in the territory. So that definitely makes Nate Oates the biggest heel. There is no doubt about that. A great villain is Nate Oates. So that, frankly, I'm thankful for that. We need more coach villains in college basketball. My favorite era maybe of college basketball ever involved a lot of sniping and pot shots back and forth between the likes of Norm Stewart, Billy Tubbs, and the like back in the Big Eight. But I will also say this. Naturally, when I say a good all-SEC caliber player might be a little overrated, well, naturally Mark Sears heard me and scored 35 points in the ball game. He was absolutely tremendous yesterday. And really, if it weren't for his three-point shooting and a lot of late clock threes by Alabama, some good defensive possessions by Missouri that was just frankly bailed out by really good shot making by the Crimson Tide. My brother-in-law I went to the game with said, hey, actually this is a good sign because Alabama wants to get the ball up quickly and we're forcing them to work it. And indeed, he was right. By the end of the game, really Alabama was just almost forced to settle for three-point shots that were 4 feet behind the line, that type of thing. Really, Missouri's length and athleticism and defense, I thought was relentless, despite the fact that, well, Alabama scored very, very well. Obviously, at an incredibly high clip. They end up with 98 points in the basketball game. Unfortunately for them, Missouri's offensive execution was, again, just about as good as it possibly could have been. Missouri ends up with 8 turnovers, shoots about 60% from the floor. For those of you who are advanced stat types, Missouri scored nearly 1.4 points per possession. If you know that stat, that is just absolutely ridiculous. Great stuff by Missouri. Obviously, Mark Mitchell was tremendous yesterday. It seemed like, again, a lot of times our opponents lately, they have to sort of pick their poison. Are we going to switch a guard onto Mitchell and try to, because that will help you defend the three-point line. Switching out on the perimeter will definitely help you defend the three. The problem is, well, now you've got the problem of, hey, we got a 6'3" guy on Mark Mitchell. And obviously, he finished tremendously in the paint yesterday. Was 10 of 12 from the floor, from 2-point range, I should say. Was 1 of 3 from three-point land as well. Also made most of his free throws. Got there 12 times. A lot of free throws for Missouri yesterday. Holy cow, 47 free throw attempts. No wonder that game took 2.5 hours to finish. But regardless, what I loved about Mitchell, I just think he's shown a little bit of more patience lately. He's starting to realize now, wait a second. If they're going to leave me one-on-one with a guard or with somebody who is at least not a traditional 6'10" type of power forward center type that Mitchell is, well, he can kind of take his time a little bit and wait to get his perfect angle and to, well, wait for a double team as well. So I just thought Mitchell's patience there really showed. And by the way, speaking of Mitchell, multiple times Trent Pierce found Mitchell from the corner on just a hard pass right under the basket. It looked like Missouri successfully maybe ran the same play at least a couple times there. I thought Pierce's whole game really was quite good. He hit 3 of his 5 shots. only one of his 5 free throws. That's a tiny bit concerning there from Pierce. But overall, I just thought he played really, really well. And the good news is it wasn't just the offense. I thought Pierce was active defensively. And like I said before, some really good passing from Pierce, which isn't necessarily something I've seen before. So that was great to see on a heck of a lot of different levels. Obviously, once again, Caleb Grill was tremendous yesterday. 25 points, 10 rebounds, hit 3 3-pointers, 10 of 11 from the free throw line. Again, Grill was also, much like Trent Pierce, was involved defensively too. Missouri's defense was just, again, I thought Missouri was really good defensively. It may not really show up in the box score because of Alabama's shot making, but I was happy with how the Tigers played defensively. I'd be interested to hear all of your takes. Maybe I'm just in the glow of basketball nirvana at the moment, but that's really how I felt. Anthony Robinson also, again, another player. When Anthony Robinson and Trent Pierce play well, I've said this before, but boy, are we almost impossible to beat when that happens right now, in my opinion. And I did have to laugh that Anthony had to get his 4 fouls in the ball game, 3 of them picked up in the first half. He's just still got to be a little bit more careful with that. But I will say, I thought Robinson was tremendous in the ball game yesterday, hitting a couple of his signature step-back 3-pointers. But I thought even more importantly, he was looking for that sort of elbow area, mid-range pull-up shot, sort of that Chris Paul, that his signature shot. I've been imploring Anthony to look for that shot more lately, and he sure did yesterday. So the answer, or the lesson, as always, I'm right, by golly. No, but in all seriousness, obviously I'm not always right, and one thing I got wrong, I would say, recently, I said Jacob Cruz was basically unplayable like a month ago. Well, ever since then, Jacob Cruz has been really good for the Tigers and been as a key part of this main 8-man rotation here, I would say. And Cruz definitely, his box score isn't going to jump off the page at you with 5 points and a couple rebounds, but I thought he had a sequence offensively. He hit his one shot that he hit, 1 3-pointer, I should say, I thought was in a really important spot. Missouri needed that shot when Alabama was kind of making a run, and also a good defensive play in that sequence for Cruz as well. So again, it seems like anytime I get negative on any player, whether it's a Missouri player or an opposing player, they go out and try to prove me wrong. So you know what? Tamar Bates, you suck. There's my latest Missouri basketball take. And Dennis Gates made a lineup choice yesterday that I thought went a long way for Missouri. So let's talk about that right after these quick words. And by the way, a quick shout out to my old friend Jake and my new friend Dakota, who hooked me up with a new truck yesterday. So yeah, Missouri, the Tigers beat the Crimson Tide, got a new whip, didn't even have to use my AK. I'd have to say it was indeed a good day. And, I will say I don't remember Mark Mitchell and Josh Gray ever being on the floor at the same time yesterday. But technically they must have been, because Mark Mitchell played 32 minutes. Josh Gray played 10 here, at least according to KenPom. But again, I thought it made all the sense in the world for the most part when Mark Mitchell came out of the game. Well, that Josh Gray was in there. And when he was in there, he had 4 shooters surrounding him. Because, frankly, when Gray and Mitchell are in the game together, Missouri's offense just tends to stagnate. The spacing just simply isn't there. And against a team like Alabama, well, you're going to need all the offense that you can get. And, of course, Alabama plays a 5-out pace and space style defensively. That sort of decision made a lot of sense, too. So great lineup choices, I thought, from Dennis Gates. And, again, we've kind of got – we know who the core 8 guys are. You've got your starting 5 there, plus, of course – Caleb Grill and Josh Gray off the bench, and Jacob Cruz has really become the 8th man these days. Marcus Allen played 8 minutes. Marquez Warwick played 2. Aiden Shaw and T.O. Barrett both got in for 1 minute. So basically, when Missouri needs a microwave off the bench, when they need somebody to juice that half-court offense, well, it seems like that's Marquez Warwick's job at the moment. And obviously with Missouri playing elite offensive basketball yesterday, he wasn't so much needed. And I would almost say almost an opposite thing for Aiden Shaw. When you really need to juice your defense, when you need an uber athletic guy who's, pushing 6'9" and can cover all the ground on the court possible, well, then Aiden Shaw is your guy. It just shows really Missouri does have kind of an embarrassment of riches here with this team and with these lineups. Really, there's not a lot of obvious weaknesses for this team. And in fact, really the one weakness that I was sort of saying on this show recently, I was saying sometimes Missouri, hey, when their half-court offense gets a little stifled, the three-point shots aren't falling, the half-court offense isn't always perfect. But it sure has been looking a lot better lately. See, that's the other thing. Dennis Gates, he can coach, folks. His team seems to just be getting better and better in the half-court offensively as well. And when Missouri has it going in the half-court like it did yesterday, I don't know that there's anybody in the country who's better. I really feel that high on this team. So again, basketball nirvana, folks. If you were at Mizzou Arena yesterday, you were very, very lucky. That was a tremendous experience, as fun as I've had in a basketball game in a long, long, long time. Thank you, Dennis Gates. That's really all I got to say. And if I had a vote, you'd be getting my vote for National Coach of the Year. I guarantee you that. So, hey, thanks for sticking with me here on Locked On Mizzou. Hopefully this has been 10% as fun as last night was, because if so, I've done a pretty good job today then, in my opinion. Thanks for making this show your first listen every day. For your second listen, check out Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. Be the most informed college basketball fan now. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And until tomorrow, I'm John Miller, and this has been Locked on Mizzou.